Welcome back to our conversation. I'm Tammy. This is my friend Tracy. We have Molly and Nolan and Tabitha here to have some discussions. And Molly's going to start us off with a recap.
Yes. So as you guys just watched, Dr. Lori gives really cool verbiage to routine, and we are in reframing. So what that kind of looks like is as we go through life, there might be some unresolved speechless terror, which is how she defines trauma. So then whenever that happens, it's kind of like you have this floating around out in your brain. But the thing is that has to have some kind of a narrative so that it doesn't invade our present. So you walk around life and then you're bumped into or something happens that reminds you even subconsciously of that event or thing that happened. And so what you have to do is get a narrative to reframe it so that you can file it in the past and live in the present so that you can have the fullness of your future.
That's very good. And one of the things that Dr. Basey teaches us is the frame through which we view a situation determines our viewpoint.
Which I think another way to say is just, in some ways simplified, might be just perspective change. Your perspective is changed on a situation. You see it in a different light. And so it could be maybe it's going to look differently, I guess, depending on what your situation is. But you just all of a sudden, oh, wow, there's a shift and I see it differently now. And it makes things hopeful and a hopeful light, how Jesus sees it.
Well, seeing it through a kingdom perspective.
Right.
Instead of just what our brain's wired to see.
Yeah. Which is really cool that I love reframing because it takes everything that we've learned so far and reframing is the culminative, this is it. This is what we've been preparing for. In order to reframe with Jesus, first you have to be connected to him. And then you have to be connected to yourself to even know that something's off. And then you have to have a community of people that can sit with you or walk you through the process of reframing, or someone that you can share who can bear witness to the things that have happened to you or that you're hearing from the Lord to make sure that that's in line with what he's saying. And then it uses all of the psychoeducation. I mean, and even when you're saying it gives a new perspective, but then you get to choose to order your RAS to see that new perspective. This is the best part.
Yeah. You have to even know that we need to reframe something. We've learned the techniques and the tools. If something we get bumped and, Galatians 5 doesn't pour out of us, then that sort of gives us that cue to be, okay, why was that? It's a time to have some curiosity about behaviors and reactions to even start to know that we need to have a reframing moment with Jesus.
Yeah. And it's not a one and done.
No.
So it's definitely a tool to keep a hold of, to even process through having a hard day. Okay, Jesus, where were you? What do I need to know about today?
And building that community that will help us when we don't maybe recognize as quickly as they do that we need to reframe something.
Right. And it may be as simple as being stuck. I know that was my situation, just sort of feeling stuck. And I think there had been a lot of events in life that had sort of taken the wind out of my sails, so to speak. But after my dad's death and then stuff with, the long year that was, and then stuff with my children. And then so all of a sudden, I'm just sort of not living the abundant life that I need to live. And how do I get out of this? And so for me, it was just him showing up. And there are a lot of ways to get there. But for me, praying and asking him to fill the longing that I needed to be filled, to be able to identify that and then ask him to do that. And he just all of a sudden revealed to me, it was revelation. I've always been there. I was there for you then. I'm there for you now. I will be there for you tomorrow. So that even though nothing was resolved, the circumstance in my life, the circumstances were the same, but my perspective had shifted. And so it may be a traumatic event that you need to be help with reframing, but it also might just be sort of a life outlook.
Yeah.
Wow. Just a little shift made all the difference.
And Nolan, did that happen for you in one setting? Was that a conversation you had with Jesus over time that reframed it? Or did you just come to yourself and say, I I'm not where I should be.
Well,
Jesus, what are you doing?
You know what? My story is a funny one because I actually went out to Oklahoma to get help with someone else, completely unaware that it was me that needed the help. But I had to get to know these women. So it took a while to sort of spend some time together and get to know each other in prayer and processing. But, on like the fourth or fifth day, it was just sort of identifying what was going on with me. What is the need what do I need to feel from him? And it was, I think the one that I could identify most was, security, that everything would be okay and that he had me and that, everything was going to be all right. And so I went to bed that night praying on scriptures that showed me that I was secure and that he was always with me and he would never leave me. And I asked him just, I need you to show me that. And it was the next day, he showed me just events in my life that I could write pages on where I saw, oh my gosh, you organized that. You orchestrated that. You did this. You did that.
So you got to see the security.
I never even gave you the credit and you were there. So it just it lifted. It's like, oh my gosh, then you'll do it again and again. And it just was
So he just sort of walked with you through your memory. So, and were you alone or with people?
I was by myself.
So
I woke up the next morning. It was like all these ideas. And I came outside and I said, oh my gosh, I have a breakthrough.
Wow.
It was really kind of amazing.
So it was the time that you'd set apart with community, but when the breakthrough actually happened, when the reframing happened, it was you and Jesus walking through your memories of the past, and you just saw Jesus in all the places.
And it wasn't walking through. It was like asking him, going to sleep, sleeping peacefully, and the next morning it
was there.
It was there.
Oh, that's really
like,
incredible. So it's more like
it was like, oh my gosh.
A knowing.
All of a sudden I could see it's almost in the rear view mirror flashbacks of all these times in my life where I never attributed any of it to him.
That's a really beautiful.
Really kind of cool.
That's a good reframing story.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And that's what reframing does. Like, if we can acknowledge and if we can really get it in us that he's always been there, then reframing just points to where he was then. So then you have his narrative of what was going on instead of yours, because that's actually the truth of what was happening. Like, that's how you order your brain to see him.
Yeah, that's really good.
So fun.
And I think when we, even as I think back when I would do disaster relief and, sometimes we get to be the person to help them reframe. And so here we are where this tornado has hit and this beautiful woman has lost her home or most of it. And, but she just needed something, kind of that security to know it was going to be okay. So we went in her bedroom where part of her ceiling was gone and her bed was still made. And we just brushed off all the glass. And we just, I just got to be that monkey in the cage that Dr. Lori talks about. And I just got to sit there with her as we let her see that Jesus was still with her. He hadn't forgotten her. He hadn't forsaken her. And it looked different, but it was that small little movement that made her realize that she still had that security in him.
So good.
So that for her later on, when she remembered or had a sensory experience and thought about that tornado, she was then going to focus on all the places Jesus was and the calming and centering effect. And I guess that actually is what puts it in its place in the timeline.
Right.
It puts it, that happened back then, but right now he's still with me and I'm safe, but I'm not going through that. Yeah. So that sets her up for the post-traumatic growth versus the post-traumatic stress, which is also what happened to you too.
And that is the beautiful thing about this process is that at the end of it, you look at the situation, and if you see it from his perspective, you actually grow. There's life on the other end of it. And so there was this amazing story that I heard in a sermon actually that my dad gave. And it's a true story. I looked it up. I almost didn't believe it, that it happened. But I can't remember the lady's name, and I'll have to get that information to you, but she was skydiving with her fiance. And they both were experienced skydivers. They'd done this many times before. In fact, he was going to, have the GoPro, was going to video the whole thing. They jumped from the plane. She pulled the parachute and it didn't work. And so she was going down, panicked. You hear him in the background telling her, what to do. She pulls again and it didn't. And if you can see the whole thing on video, you see just the parachute hasn't opened and she's twirling and twisting. And she ends up hitting the ground at 50 miles an hour, slamming into the ground. And it's all on video. And miraculously, she didn't die. She survived it, which is just in and of itself like
a miracle. Oh
my gosh. I mean, this is on the news. It's everywhere. And so she goes to the hospital. I don't think there's a single bone in her face that wasn't broken. Most of the bones in her body are shattered. She has extensive surgeries. They find out she's pregnant. And guess what? The baby is okay.
Oh my gosh.
Which is just amazing. Shocking in and of itself. So she has this baby. It's a healthy baby boy. And she's interviewed later after the surgeries and after she's had the baby, and she's got the baby on camera with her. And they're saying, and it's all on video. And how do you watch this? How do you watch that moment where you slam into the pavement? I just don't see how. And she says, how can I watch it? Of course I can watch it because I know how the story ends. It's this miracle of life is on the other end of it. This is her child. It's just so you see the whole situation changes and you see it from a totally different perspective, and you want to watch it because that's not the end of the story, which is the hope that Jesus brings, and he brings to all of us and all of our stories, whether it's a traumatic event that we've been through or just even a stuck place, a life perspective that really we need him to look at with us and readjust.
Yeah. Goes back to what we behold, we become.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we need that tool to be able to reframe properly and to hear clearly. And I think that brings out the importance of that connection with God, that we keep our connection with God. All the things, like you said, Molly, before, that we have to go through all the things that we've talked about before. So we're connected with God, so we're connected with others so that they can help us walk through this process and, really be honest with us when we're not hearing clearly.
Correct.
Right.
And unfortunately, some of that, sometimes it's the hard, I wish it was easier, but sometimes it's the hard places where you have the most potential for growth. And I look back on my the last 2 or 3 years, and in the moment, it was like the worst thing that had ever happened, and it was hopeless. And now I honestly can say to myself, but also with my children and the things they've been through. I mean, we've literally said it to each other, verbalized. I would do it all again. I would have it all be repeated again if I would know that on this side of it, I'd have the relationship with God that I have, and I'd have the relationship with you that I have. And so I wouldn't change a thing. And so that's the place that we all want to be.
That can only happen with reframing with Jesus. I mean, you can't have that kind of growth and perspective without the divine
otherwise
help.
It would wipe you out. It would incapacitate you, and you would be unable. And it's what Satan wants us to happen for all of us, is that event wipes you out. You're ineffective for the kingdom. You're not, able to show his glory in any way.
Yeah, just coping.
Your life you're crippled, basically. You're limping along for the rest of it. That's what he wants. And so it's just so amazing that he can reframe it for us.
Yeah.
But also that it takes time. Like, it's a walkout, right? But as Dr. Lori says, there's no shortcuts to it.
You're right.
So if you are in that stuck place, that's where your brain will naturally go until you get a new narrative for that speechless terror, or until you do it. But there's not just an easy way to just keep stuffing or keep ignoring with whatever coping mechanism or safety behavior that you're using. But I think the biggest thing that I learned with reframing is that you have to do it to actually heal it. And I think at first, like I remember when I first got to know boundaries and entered into a community, I thought reframing was the worst because it was the anxiety of it, of not knowing what was going to happen, or what if Jesus doesn't show up, or what if I can't hear him, or what if he wasn't there.
A lot of people feel
like that's the
fear.
Yes, the fear and the shame, because then you're actually having to say like, hey, either this was done to me, or hey, I did this, like, which is terrifying in the moment. And so I would just like, just kind of clam up and not want to even participate at all. And it wasn't until after doing it over and over again and seeing Jesus give a new narrative or point out to where he was looking in the rearview mirror that it was like, now it's freeing. Like now it's like, man, if I'm stuck, like, then let's go ahead and reframe it because I want his narrative. I want to know where he was. You become desperate for it.
I remember her saying, you don't need to wait a day longer and carry this a day longer than it's necessary. He's ready to do it right now. He's always good to show up. He's never going to leave you hanging. And so I encourage you, if there's something that we can pray about right now and get resolved, let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he will also let you hold on to it.
If you choose.
Yes.
He will be that gentleman that, lets you carry it if you really aren't ready or won't be ready. But I think that through the CPR method, we've really talked about the skills necessary to recognize when we need to reframe, to be able to regulate when it's time to reframe, and then
to have the community.
Yes.
They all work together, because really you do need, most of us can't go reframe by ourselves.
Especially the first time I went.
That makes you crazier.
I don't know. Shauna was pretty amazing yesterday with her story.
But she had already done this
right.
stuff.
I think that it's so helpful to have the safe people that you can go and that they can be a witness to the story, to what's happening, and that you trust them and you feel safe with them, and that they're praying for you and that they're listening also. And sometimes can hear things that you can't see when you're, from your perspective, it's too personal and too close. So a community, it all works together.
Yeah. For me, once I learned the skills with the reframing, I have to go and do the work by myself with me and Jesus. Otherwise, then I can slip back into an old pattern of performance. And that if I don't come up with something right now, then I feel like I'm failing whoever's sitting with me while I do it. But then I know that once I get at least a part of it, I have to take it to my community that I trust, to be able to, okay, here's what I have, hear what I feel like Jesus is saying. And to then just pray with them and see, is there more that I'm not getting, that they're supposed to be a part of the healing process with me?
That's really good. Yeah. I agree.
And that community is so critical. I can remember, sadly, I was in a position years ago that we didn't have that freedom to feel like we could go to the community. We had to find a community outside of our community, if that made sense.
Yeah.
Because we weren't allowed to look like there was anything going on. And so reframing was super hard for me in the beginning, because I had to not only learn how to do that,
take the mask off,
but realize that it wasn't a sign of weakness. That it takes way more courage to say, I need you to walk through this with me than it does to sit in silence. Sitting in silence is the easy part.
And denying there is a problem. And masking the problem.
Yes.
All the energy that it takes to hold that mask up when you're just dying on the inside. So weary. That's when people grow weary and doing well. So that's when we know that there's an opportunity for reframing.
Yeah. And that's when to have the community that will.
Yes.
Then you value that so much more. But that's what the body of Christ is supposed to be. Yes. And I think because it's way more fun, how much more fun is it whenever you get to participate and watching someone receive healing, or Jesus shows, or if you're the one who's walking through the reframing and someone sees a different perspective, what the forest, trees, you can't see the
forest for the trees.
So whenever they can see a different aspect, or they can be like, hey, look at where he was here that you might have completely missed had you just like sat there or tried to do it on your own. Like,
or once you've reframed it and you found that new narrative, our old pathways will want to make us forget that.
Yes.
And so the community can then say, wait a minute, remember what he told you.
What if that's not
right.
true?
that sounds like accountability.
It's really good. But I mean, just to remind you of what what you've been told and what God has done in your life.
Yeah.
They can re-speak that life back into you where you've like might have missed it or left it somewhere.
Fallen back into a pattern that,
You can say, wait a second, didn't this get resolved here? I sat with you in this before. Yeah.
And then even with the community aspect, testimony means do it again. So being able to share it and just saying, Jesus, thank you for this story. This is part of your story. It's part of my story. And so let's just do it again as a community. Let's continue to just keep on pushing forward to what he has for us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's right.
Yeah. And the thing about reframing though, again, I just want to reiterate is should you not, it really does pop up and mostly in the most inconvenient times. Like that's the thing, like when you don't give a narrative to it or when it's just floating around in your brain, then you're just going about your daily life thinking that you're thriving and suddenly, and I'm just here to tell you that it doesn't come up when it's convenient.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's in the most inconvenient ways. I remember one time we were on outreach and it popped up, and it was super inconvenient and took me out of outreach for like 3 weeks or something crazy before I could sit down and actually just get truth. And that's what reframing does is it brings truth where it feels like there's just death. And where it just feels gross, but it gets the death reconciled under the truth, meaning under Jesus, of the truth as a person. And that perspective, that's the thing that breaks chains. And that's the thing that frees your mind.
Well, quite frankly, it's how we can go through Good Friday because it's not the end of the story.
Right.
We know that he's risen. So it's how you can walk through that. If that were the end of the story, then
that would suck.
No, but he rose. Therefore, there's more to the story.
That's right.
And there is for us too, our resurrection life.
That's right. No matter how crazy the world gets, he is still on the throne.
Yes. Yeah.
One of the things the way that our brain works, which is fabulous, is, sometimes things happen to us when we're super young and we don't always have even a true narrative. Like we don't have all the facts. We only see in part. We only know in part. And actually, when we're dealing with that trauma, it's all about how we felt in the moment. So sometimes our story that we get may not, like if a kid went through the story and compared it to the parent's story, they may not even match up. But because they've given words to that story, and then they ask Jesus where he was in that and what his perspective was, it doesn't really even matter if the story from the child's feeling viewpoint was actually truth or not. It was causing a feeling, and Jesus stepping into that moment in time changes it anyway. And so that's really where the breakthrough can happen. It's letting go of sometimes even a narrative that may even not have all the facts. You know what I'm saying? So we don't have to get hung up in all the facts. We're not going to be fact checking. We're really looking for Jesus in those situations. And so I know sometimes we might be inhibited to try to do some reframing if our thinking part of our brain doesn't know all the details. And so I just don't want anyone to be hindered for trying to step into it when they just feel this way or they get a sensation and it makes them whirl, or like Shauna's story where she was just feeling, but she didn't have the story yet. So just it's the opportunity and invitation into reframing is for anybody who's having a struggle or something that's just not quite right. They may not be able to put their finger exactly on it, but then their wonder and their curiosity can rise up and invite Jesus into that and get his story about it.
Awesome.
So even when it comes up for I know a lot of times I'd be like, I don't know what like I don't have words for the thing. And so the question would be like, okay, Molly, then can you tell me what it feels like on the inside of your body right now?
The sensory questions.
Yes. And those, I'm like, yes, I can tell you that my insides feel like spaghetti noodles. And it's like, okay, like there we go. Like
I have done that same exercise with children who have gone through trauma, and they have zero words to say, using anxiety or whatever, but I can give them a choice of crayons and a picture of an outlined body. And I could say, can you show me what it feels like in your body? And their parent is just blown away with the way that they're able to communicate through that drawing and through those colors and how they can tell exactly how they're feeling.
Yeah.
So, and then inviting Jesus into that is just beautiful.
Yeah. And then even as adults, we sometimes just our definitions that we have for feelings don't line up with other people's definitions for feelings.
That's true.
So then being able to say, what does it feel like in your body? Or if you could describe a color that you're seeing right now, what would you say? And so, and just being able to put words into it like that, to be able to be on the same page.
Yeah.
Which goes back to our brain, right? So if it's stored in the middle part of our brain, which is going to be the sensations and the feelings associated with it, then in order to hit that, then you have to activate those feelings and those sensations all over again. Yeah. Because if you could have cognitively or intellectually processed through it, you would have already done it.
Right.
But the point of the reframing is that something hasn't had this yet. It hasn't had a narrative. All you know are the feelings and the sensations. So then obviously that's where you would start with what are the senses? There's like 5 of them. Feel,
smell, touch, taste.
Okay. Yeah. All of those. But to start with that and then describe Jesus in those sensory places, man. And then what's happening is actually you're getting the experiential knowledge of him. Because then when you can see him and you can hear him and you can touch him in a place that you haven't been able to, that was just so riddled with trauma and gross, and to see the King of the universe like want to encounter us in the worst parts of our story or in the worst parts of our trauma or the worst parts of anything that's happened to us, when we can see him and feel him in that, man, and then you're no longer thinking about the gross. Now, every time you think about it, you're thinking about him. So you then, instead of re-experiencing trauma and over again, you're going to re-experience Christ over and over again, which takes it from that head knowledge and straight into a heart knowledge.
Yes.
Is there anything more beautiful than reframing?
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it really, really is a great tool that we don't have to be afraid of. We don't have to be ashamed of. Like, we really can walk with Jesus, walk with the community, and do this.
Yeah. And I think even as some individuals may walk through this study, there might not be something that's brought up right now. And that's okay. We say a lot that if Jesus doesn't bring it up, then maybe he's not in a hurry to heal it. It's not the right timing because you're not equipped right now to do it. You don't have the tools, but he's going to supply them and he will bring it up whenever he's ready to walk through it with you.
Or when you say like that, I can't remember this, like then don't go trying to remember this, and this. But like he's faithful to reveal and to bring it up as he's ready to heal it in you and know that you're the place that you can handle that kind of capacity of experiencing him.
And then I'm also a very logical person. And so I could think myself way too much into a situation to where I'm just using my logic and I'm not tapping into my imagination. And so sometimes that requires me to pull someone in while I need to find the situation, or even my connection with Jesus is so key to be able just to sit and say, Jesus, where are you right now? And what do you want to show me? So then I don't just tap into, well, maybe I just needed to do this in this moment. So tapping into the connection with
him and then also with yourself. And I think that's, I mean, again, we keep talking about how it all works together, but we've mentioned, the 7 longings of the heart and what are those longings that I need God to meet, or the desires on the desire wheel. I know that with the women recently, we were in a women's study, and I really got in touch with the fact that so many women have not been taught, and men, I shouldn't have said that, women and men have not really been taught to express their feelings.
Right.
And there's just so many resources that you can really can help you pinpoint how you're feeling when you're not used to doing that. And one of them was these little cards that came with that questions for Jesus thing, where it showed a range of different emotions and described each one of them. And it was amazing how helpful it was for these women to say, oh my gosh, to have them laid out and describe a moment this morning, how your morning went, which one identifies with how your morning went, and for them to be able to say, this is so helpful. Can I take these home? Because people just aren't encouraged to, you're supposed to get over it and go through your day, push it down, suppress it, whatever, instead of just kind of getting in touch with yourself along with Jesus in your community.
Yeah.
And so that there're just a lot of great resources. And so I would just encourage you to also look into that.
Yeah. In the Questions for Jesus book, a couple pages after the desire wheel, it has like other words that describe what is actually on the desire wheel. And sometimes I'm like, I have no idea what I'm feeling right now. So then I could flip to that page and be like, oh, that's another word for that. Okay. Yeah. That's probably what I'm feeling. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So good.
You ready for a recap?
Yeah, I sure am. So here's what I'm hearing is that you don't have to stay stuck. And at the end of the day, if you're a human on planet Earth, you've had trauma. And it can look like anything, and it can look like just a place that he hasn't met you yet. But here's the thing is that he wants to. And reframing, this is the climax of restoration. This is whenever the death of your life gets reconciled under the blood of Jesus, and truth is what happens. And this is where restoration happens. This is where he can take the gross things that have happened to you or the gross things that you've done and put his narrative on it, because that is actually how it happened. And whenever we can wrap our minds around that Jesus is outside of time, meaning he can insert himself into any moment in your life and he can heal it just like that, because he wants to see you set free. And you guys, the days of managing our trauma are over. The days of having to sit in it because it was spoken over you or taking it on as an identity, those days are over, because you're created to do something more with your life, and you're created for bigger things other than living into your traumatic events. That it will open so many new doors, that trauma doesn't have the last word, but the blood of Christ does, because he already did it. The cross already took on everything. It was the greatest trauma, and nothing can compete with innocence crucified. Not one thing. Right. And if you want to hear more stories from me and Ann Nolan about how we've had to reframe and the beauty that came out of reframing with Christ that set us free, I would encourage you to watch the testimonies at the end of this series, and we will see you guys next time.
Okay, so this next section would be the reframing portion of it. And that's just taking a traumatic experience or a crisis and being able to look at that situation from a new lens, where it's no longer has the same sting and it can't re-traumatize you again, so that you can be healed from this and you give it a new narrative or a new frame. So, we went out. She had decided to go to Oklahoma. We went out there. We connected with these ladies. We did some exercise, which they always want to do, just to get all of the hormones, all these toxins released. And then we just spent some time catching up. My daughter is musical, and she had written a song and sort of sang a song that sort of described the experience of what had happened that night. So she shared it in the privacy of just, 2 or 3 of these women and myself. And we just prayed and asked God to come, the Holy Spirit to join us and just lead us through a place of healing and restoration. This is totally possible. God wants to do this. You're not meant to carry it. And so that's exactly what we did. And it was a beautiful process, and it didn't even take long. Lori led us through some prayer and just made sure that she understood that she was safe and where she was right now. and that we could look at this of what happened as sort of from the outside looking in, as if that's not even her. And she kind of walked her through some of the details of the night, making sure to activate her brain, making her sort of, what did you smell? What did you see? What did you hear? What were you wearing? What were other people wearing? As she was comfortable, just to sort of close her eyes and walk back through the events of the night. And I think that she was really feeling at this point very small and very vulnerable and weak. And I know for a fact that she felt some guilt about not having fought harder or tried harder to escape. And it was just such a beautiful thing to have Dr. Lori explain to her that this is the way the brain was created for your safety, that there are these responses that you either fight, flight, or freeze, and that she froze, and that that's okay, and that was natural. That was how God created her brain, so that she could survive a difficult time. So she didn't need to feel any shame or remorse or guilt for how she responded in that survival moment, which was just a beautiful thing. But as she was remembering what was going on, this is when Jesus was invited. This is what it's going to look like to reframe. Jesus was invited into that moment, and she was asked if she could find him, which she was. And she asked, what is Jesus doing? And she said, Jesus was holding her hand. And Lori asked, can you find the person and who did this to you? And she found him. And she walked with Jesus over to this person. And again, she was asked, what was he wearing? What was he doing? And so her mind and her brain and her imagination was activated, and she was back in that place looking as a bystander at the situation. And she was asked, what would you like to say to him? And she said, you don't have the right to do what you did. She was asked, what did he take from you? She was able to say, you took my innocence. Dr. Lori said, can you take it back from him? And she imagined that, first of all, she was supposed to take all this back, but she had seen the guy who at that time she felt so weak and small and tiny and helpless. He was actually standing next to Jesus. She saw him as she said, like a superhero figure, a really small character. And so no longer did he have that power over her when she was standing beside Jesus. And as she took back her innocence from him, she imagined it as a lanyard that was around his neck. And she grabbed the lanyard and put it back. And then she said what else that he took from her, whether it was, her innocence, her excitement, her energy, her joy. She was able to reclaim all of that back from him and say the things that she needed to say to him. And as soon as she was able to say all of those things, she was asked if she could forgive him. And it was the most unbelievable thing to watch as this process unfolded. And many, many details there are to this story that I, just for the sake of time, can't go into. But after the process was completed, she walked through a prayer of forgiveness and forgave him for what happened and prayed for his family and his future. And she actually bent down, scooped up, and picked up this tiny little figure and placed him in the palm of Jesus' hand. And in that process, she also was holding a bucket of tar that was filled with shame and just everything dirty. And she was able to give it to Jesus, and he walked off with it. And he walked off with the person as well. And she felt so free. She was just, you could visibly feel and see just a weight lifted from her shoulders. And she felt like all of this that she'd been carrying had been released. It was the most beautiful thing. And she said that it was like flying in an airplane and all of the doors opening and the windows opening and everything that was shameful and hurtful and painful that had happened in this process was just sucked out, and she felt free. And I just to see what the power of what Jesus can do in just a moment. He wants to heal. He wants to restore us. He wants to set us free. He wants to meet us in the broken places in our lives, and he'll do it again and again and again if we will just open our hearts to whatever he is going to do, wherever he wants to lead us, to surrender that to him and just be free. And so this story is a story that she's been set free from. This took place less than a month after the crisis happened initially. And so there's no reason to carry around any sort of hurt or pain or trauma one day longer than necessary. And it was a miracle. And so I just am so excited to share that story of reframing that event so that it doesn't have the power over her and her memory and her future and her going forward. And so she's just free to take flight into this next chapter of her life without any baggage. And it's just beautiful.
In my time of going through this CPR process, I've gotten to reframe a whole bunch of things. So just to kind of reiterate that it's not a one and done, that this really is a process, and as things come up, they'll just need to be reframed with Jesus. And it's my favorite part because reframing takes correct information and inserts truth. So for me, this looks like something that I struggled with since literally I was 16 years old, and that was taking showers. And I would just get super, super anxious every time I would start to take a shower. So whenever I turned on the water and you hear like the, which is the water running, that's what that was supposed to be, then I would just be incredibly anxious. And I'd want to not do it, and I hated it. I dreaded taking showers. I dreaded even the thought of taking a shower. And so for a solid 14 years, I just wouldn't. So my average time would be like, hey, I would shower every 7 to 10 days. And this was on like a good week. This is when things were going really, really well, is 7 to 10 days. And then I get to no boundaries and I start this CPR process, and I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking this is fine. This is normal. Like, it doesn't matter. And then I'm in a community and they're like, hey, like, is there a reason why? Like, is there a deeper like root of the why behind the behavior? And I was like, yeah, I just don't like them. Like, it's a chore and it's annoying, and I'd rather do literally anything else than be alone by myself and take a shower. And they're like, well, let's just press in. Let's just ask Jesus if there's anything there that he wants to reveal or say, or if there's a why behind the what. And I was like, all right, fine. So I sat and I asked Jesus, and he kind of revealed to me that every time I would go to start the shower, that it would trigger something in my brain that would say danger and run away. Because before, when I was in sex trafficking, then every time I would like go to start a shower at that time in my life, it was either to get ready to go be with someone's or to clean up from afterward. And so naturally, my midbrain files it as this is danger, and my amygdala says, warning, warning, don't take a shower. And then I'm thinking, I don't like them anyways because it's a chore. So that's just what I kind of like chalked it up to. But really there was something deeper happening.
that I didn't like showers because I was preparing myself for something horrible, that I was either going to be cleaning up or going out. And I hated it. So then, after that was revealed, I was like, well, that's as far as I can go right now. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to deal with it. Jesus, I'm not bringing it to you. Like, nope. Like, this one is going to be different. Like, you just kind of talk yourself into thinking those things. And so eventually, though, it was time to take a shower. And I was like, all right, maybe this one will be different, but maybe not. And I go into the bathroom, and immediately in my brain, I think, nope, not doing it. I'm not going to do it. So then I was like, well, how can I make an excuse for myself? Because that was my favorite thing to do, is make a reason as to why I couldn't possibly do this. So I go on to the internet, and I literally typed in, like, why women don't want to take showers. And it led me through kind of a weird place. But eventually I got to this forum of every woman who wasn't taking showers because of trauma that happened to them in a bathroom. And I was like, well, I have trauma from a bathroom. And it's just post after post after post after post of women who are hurting, who are saying, I can't do it anymore. I just use baby wipes or just take spray. And then they give like kind of alternatives to just taking the shower. And I was like, wait a second, right after I was looking for reasons to not. And then I found a whole bunch of women who weren't. And I was like, wait a second, I know Jesus, and this isn't right. And this can't be okay. This can't be the end of the story for those women. And he was like, well, it's in you and then through you. How do you expect them to do the thing, or how do you expect to ask people to do that thing if you can't even do that thing? Do you trust me or do you not? And that was the real question, because at some point, the safety behavior that we're trusting, we love more than we love him, because it works for a second. But I'm telling you, it's not worth it, because at some point it's not going to work. This will save you time. Do these things with Jesus. So I'm at this house and I'm pacing back and forth, and it's time to take a shower. And I'm like, Jesus, there are people who aren't taking showers, and it's not okay because they've had trauma, but do they know that you're the healer? And do they know that you can show up? And he was like, yeah, do you know that I'm the healer? And do you know that I can show up? And so finally I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And this is going to be a shower for the kingdom of heaven. This is one small shower for Molly and one big shower for the kingdom of heaven. And so I start the shower and I get in and I'm like, okay, Jesus, but now's the time. But how are you showing up and what are you saying? How can we reframe this? I'm here and I'm listening and I'm available. And he says, you know what, Molly? Here's the thing. How I designed showers for you specifically in their original design was so that you would clean up, that you would clean off all the lies and you would wash off all the things that you picked up along the day, the things that I wasn't attaching to you, that got attached to you from someone else, or that you believed about yourself. I want to just wash those things off. I do want to clean you up. And then the second part is that I do want to send you out. I want to send you out into the world clean and holy and righteous, and that you'll leave the gunk in here. And that was my original design for you. Do you want to have it back? And I was like, yeah, I want to have that back. I want to take back that territory that was taken from me. That showers through like this is your inheritance through my life. And it was really, really cool. But it just shows like how I just had to get his perspective. And the thing about reframing is he wants to tell us something in it. And I've had to reframe a whole bunch of things. But this one, just this daily act that I did just mindlessly almost, and I made excuses for based on trauma. And then even the world would give me permission to sit in that. They'd say it's okay. There's a whole forum of women telling me it's okay that I don't have to take a shower. But Jesus says, I want to restore all things. And I want to make all things new. And I want to return to you what was lost. And in that, whenever he got to frame that out, that now whenever I start the shower, I'm not thinking about something horrible that happened. I'm thinking, man, God, what do you want to wash off of me today? Like, what did I pick up that it wasn't mine to carry that I can toss down the drain? And then, Jesus, how are you going to prepare me for the rest of the day today? That I'm going to get ready and I'm going to be present with the people around me. And then the people around me are also like, thank you, Jesus, for helping Molly shower. Is win-win-win. So that's been a little bit of what reframing was like for me.